Miranda Burley, a prominent socialite in southern Alabama, paced anxiously across the polished tiles of her sprawling foyer. Days had passed since she had placed an order for her coveted Belderm signature lotions, a rare line of skincare products rumored to erase fine lines better than any competitor on the market. She'd seen raving reviews from influencers, and as someone who prided herself on flawless appearances, Miranda felt she couldn't miss out. Yet the package's delivery kept getting postponed, first by a day, then by two, until the shipping update stopped providing any clarity at all. It wasn't just about the lotions, though. Miranda's self-image was tightly bound to the notion that she always had access to the finest items money could buy. The slightest delay in receiving something she desired wound her nerves as tight as a violin string. Standing in her living room, she clenched her phone, refreshing the tracking page. The status remained the same, delayed, in transit. For the third time that morning, she slammed the device onto the coffee table, muttering expletives under her breath. Outside, the late afternoon sun beamed across her immaculate front lawn. Miranda glared through the window at the empty porch, a swirl of resentment bubbling in her chest. She had half a mind to call the shipping company, but she loathed waiting on hold. Instead, she shot off a flurry of pointed emails, demanding an explanation. A response arrived soon after, apologizing for unexpected logistical challenges and assuring her the parcel would arrive within 24 hours. 24 hours. Unacceptable, Miranda hissed. She'd planned an entire weekend around these lotions, organizing a spa day at home, complete with champagne and cucumber slices, a ritual she only indulged in when she received new luxury products. Each minute that passed without her Belderm delivery felt like a personal affront. Miranda's frustration simmered throughout the day. She prowled around her house, rearranging decorative pillows, checking her phone obsessively, and running hypothetical scenarios about confronting the courier. Around twilight, she scrolled through social media, spotting a friend's post celebrating the arrival of the same lotions. That friend lived just 3 blocks away, yet here Miranda stood, empty-handed. The envy made her blood boil. Eventually, the shipping status updated one more time, indicating the parcel would reach her home the following morning. A flicker of relief crossed her face, at least there was a promise of resolution on the horizon. Still, her nerves remained on edge, her self-assured composure eroding with each hour that passed. She turned in for the night, restless, unable to shake a nagging feeling that things wouldn't go as smoothly as she hoped. In her final moments before falling asleep, Miranda pictured the Belderm lotions lined up on her marble vanity, their sleek packaging a testament to the luxury she felt entitled to. Little did she know how abruptly her daydreams would collide with reality, and with an unexpected encounter, once the package finally arrived. The sun was barely peeking over the horizon when Miranda Burley woke to the chirping of her phone. She bolted upright, hoping the notification signaled that her Belderm signature lotions were finally on their way. Sure enough, an email from the shipping company flashed on her screen, "Your parcel is out for delivery." Relief momentarily softened the perpetual frown that had marred her face for days. She sprang out of bed, threw on a satin robe, and rushed downstairs. Her housekeeper, Denise, was preparing coffee in the kitchen. "Any sign of a delivery truck yet?" Miranda asked, tapping her manicured nails on the countertop. Denise shook her head, quietly suggesting Miranda relax with a cup of coffee. Miranda waved off the offer. Relaxing was impossible when so much anticipation coursed through her veins. Minutes turned into hours. Each time Miranda heard a car door slam outside, she peered through the window, only to see a neighbor or a passerby. By late morning, agitation had eroded her earlier optimism. She found herself standing by the window once more, scanning the street. Finally, a white delivery van crept into view. Miranda's pulse quickened. The driver hopped out, placed a small parcel on someone else's porch, then continued down the street. She held her breath. Moments later, the van stopped in front of her house. Miranda silently cheered as the driver grabbed a medium-sized box from the back. She couldn't quite read the label, but the shape and size matched what she'd been expecting. Eagerly, she hovered near her front door, prepared to greet the courier and scoop up her precious lotions in person. But the knock never came. A minute ticked by, then two. Miranda cracked open the door, baffled by the absence of a delivery on her welcome mat. She stepped outside, and saw nothing. No box, no driver, no sign of her Belderm products. Confusion flooded her thoughts. Had the driver mistaken her address? She'd heard of neighborly mix-ups before, but never with something so crucial. Annoyed, she marched onto the lawn, scanning nearby porches. Next door, a modest brick home with trimmed hedges displayed no sign of a package. Across the street, a row of townhomes stood quiet, no suspicious deliveries in sight. Deciding to investigate further, Miranda slipped into a pair of designer flats and strode around the corner. As she approached the next block, she spotted a woman, dressed casually, with a hoodie and leggings, holding a package. This woman appeared to be reading the label, as though verifying an address. Miranda's heart pounded. Could this stranger have her Belderm lotions? Without a second thought, Miranda approached. The woman looked up, revealing warm brown eyes that flickered with mild surprise. Miranda noticed she was African American, with braided hair pulled into a neat bun. In an instant, Miranda's frustration boiled over, overshadowing any courtesy she might normally observe. "Excuse me," Miranda said curtly, eyeing the box in the woman's hands. "That wouldn't happen to have the name, Burley, on it, would it?" The woman, Tessa Monroe, glanced at Miranda and then back at the label. "Actually, it says Tessa Monroe. But the address is mislabeled. Looks like it's for a house a few blocks away." Miranda crossed her arms, suspicion mounting. The packaging resembled her long-awaited lotions, even down to the sticker from the same online retailer. "That must be mine," she insisted. "I've been waiting forever, and the driver obviously screwed up." Tessa frowned politely. "I'm sorry, but it's got my name on it. I ordered some specialty items. It's not for you." Incensed, Miranda refused to accept Tessa's explanation. "Let me see the label," she demanded, stepping forward. Tessa instinctively moved back, her grip on the box tightening. A tense silence followed, neither woman willing to budge. Feeling a surge of indignation, Miranda spat, "So you just conveniently found a random package on my street and assumed it's yours? I'm calling the shipping company, and maybe the police, if you don't hand it over." Tessa's eyes narrowed. "I'm not trying to steal anything," she said calmly. "If it's truly yours, we can sort it out, but this label has my name. There might have been a mix-up." Miranda refused to entertain that possibility. Everything about Tessa's calm demeanor and the package in her hands enraged her further. She whipped out her phone, heart pounding in her chest. For a moment, she contemplated dialing the shipping company's customer service line, but in her fury, she scrolled instead to the emergency services number. She'd show this woman that theft, especially of her precious Belderm lotions, would not be tolerated. Tessa watched as Miranda's thumb hovered over her phone. "I wouldn't do that," Tessa warned quietly. But Miranda was beyond reason. She pressed the call button. As the line rang, Tessa shook her head, an odd glint in her gaze. Within seconds, Miranda snarled into her phone, "Hello? I need the authorities. Someone's trying to steal my package. Yes, right now. Please hurry." She recited the cross streets. Tessa stood there, unmoving, the parcel still clutched to her chest. As Miranda ended the call, a strange silence enveloped them both. A confrontation that had seemed trivial moments ago had now escalated toward a legal face-off. Miranda felt a giddy rush of vindication, convinced the police would side with her. Meanwhile, Tessa remained resolute, softly exhaling as though bracing for a storm she knew was coming. The air felt thick with tension as Miranda Burley and Tessa Monroe stood on the sidewalk, locked in a silent standoff. Miranda's phone call to the emergency line replayed in her mind, fueling her confidence that law enforcement would soon arrive to rectify what she saw as a blatant act of theft. Meanwhile, Tessa's measured composure unnerved Miranda. Why didn't this woman seem more rattled? Finally, Tessa broke the silence. "Mind if I say something before the police get here?" she asked, her voice calm yet firm. Miranda merely sneered, giving a curt nod. She was eager to see how the intruder would attempt to justify holding onto the package that was clearly meant for her. "You haven't even asked my name," Tessa remarked, glancing at the box. "I told you it's for Tessa Monroe, and that's me. But let's assume for a second there's been a mix-up. Wouldn't the simplest approach be to compare addresses or check the tracking number together?" Miranda rolled her eyes. "Why should I? I know my own address by heart. This is my neighborhood. If you don't live here, that's suspicious enough." Tessa folded her arms. "Actually, I do live in the general area. At least for now. But that's not really the point." A hint of curiosity flickered in Miranda's eyes. "What do you mean, for now? Are you some sort of tourist? Or maybe a drifter?" Tessa shook her head. "I'm a private investigator, Ms. Burley." Those words hit Miranda like a jolt. She had anticipated Tessa might be a door-to-door scam artist or an opportunistic thief, but a private investigator. The notion clashed with every assumption she'd made in the past few minutes. She arched an eyebrow, skeptical. "A private investigator?" "Right. And I'm the governor." "I get that you don't believe me," Tessa responded. "But it's true. I've been in this neighborhood for several weeks now, investigating a pattern of missing packages reported by local residents." Miranda scoffed, crossing her arms. "Missing packages? That's hardly unusual. Delivery companies lose things all the time." Tessa gave a small, tight-lipped smile. "Not in such a precise pattern. When I looked into it, I noticed that the missing parcels were all from high-end retailers or contained luxury items. Neighbors started suspecting an internal problem within the shipping company. But the number of complaints skyrocketed recently." Miranda's posture stiffened. She recalled reading vague rumors on a local community forum about thefts plaguing the area. But she had shrugged them off, assuming it was more fearmongering than fact. "So, what does that have to do with me?" she asked, her voice laced with defensiveness. Tessa paused, choosing her words carefully. "Let's just say I discovered that many of these deliveries were routed correctly, yet vanished after the courier left them in plain sight. On several occasions, individuals matching your general location were seen taking parcels that weren't addressed to them." Miranda's cheeks flushed an angry red. "That's absurd. Are you implying I stole someone else's packages? I can afford anything I want, I don't need to pinch random deliveries." "Money doesn't always stop people from doing questionable things," Tessa said, her tone unwavering. "Sometimes it's about a thrill, or a sense of entitlement." Miranda bristled. "Don't psychoanalyze me. If you have actual proof, then show me." Tessa glanced around, noting the quiet suburban street. "I will, in due time. But first, let's talk about the box in my hands. You were certain it was yours. However, the shipping label bears my name. I orchestrated this specific package's delivery as bait, using a burner address so it would be easy for someone already watching for incoming deliveries to intercept it. Because you've called the authorities, they'll soon see exactly what's on the label, and they'll also learn what I know." Miranda felt a pang of alarm course through her. She couldn't fathom how Tessa could assert such a damning accusation. Yes, Miranda had occasionally taken in packages that seemed wrongly addressed, but always with the plan to, well, she never actually returned them. She often found interesting items inside, though she mostly rationalized it by blaming the shipping companies for being incompetent. A tense minute passed, the silence broken only by the hum of a distant lawnmower. Then Tessa added, "I'm sure you're familiar with a few recent deliveries that never reached their rightful owners, like a limited edition watch or a new smartphone. The victims' addresses? Barely 2 streets from here. Miranda's pulse thundered in her ears. She recalled seeing a neighbor's post on social media about a missing watch. She had scrolled past, uninterested. Could Tessa have traced it back to her? Fear prickled in her stomach. I don't have time for this, Miranda snapped, lifting her chin in defiance. The authorities will sort out this mess, and you'll be exposed as a liar. Tessa met her gaze squarely. If you're so confident, why do you look worried? Worried? Miranda feigned a laugh. I'm simply irritated. You're wasting my morning, and I want my lotions, end of story. Before Tessa could respond, a distant siren wailed, growing louder by the second. Miranda felt a surge of relief. Finally, the cavalry had arrived. She secretly reveled in the idea that Tessa would soon be the one feeling cornered and humiliated. But Tessa seemed unperturbed. She merely held the package tighter, standing as though anchored to the spot, ready for a confrontation. Her poise under pressure rattled Miranda, who was accustomed to winning arguments through sheer force of personality. As the siren approached, Tessa's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, then pocketed it discreetly. I guess you and I will be talking to the officers soon, Tessa said softly. Miranda huffed. Yes, we will. And we'll see who leaves in handcuffs. Her words dripped with venom, but a flicker of anxiety lurked beneath them. In the distance, the flashing lights of a patrol car came into view. 2 uniformed officers stepped out and surveyed the scene, a well-dressed woman fuming, a calm private investigator holding a disputed package, and a tension so thick it practically radiated from the sidewalk. Little did Miranda realize that the stage she'd set would soon reverse, turning her indignation into fear, and her veneer of righteousness into something far more precarious. Tessa Monroe seemed ready, as though she had anticipated Miranda's every move, and had collected the necessary evidence to prove it. The patrol car's headlights cast an eerie glow on the otherwise quiet street, accentuating the tension between Miranda Burley and Tessa Monroe. As the 2 officers stepped forward, Miranda's sense of vindication swelled. She pictured Tessa being led away, package in tow. After all, Miranda was the one who dialed the emergency line, and in her mind, that automatically made her the victim. One of the officers, a tall man with a name tag reading Officer Larkin, approached cautiously. The other, a shorter woman named Officer Ramirez, scanned the surroundings. We got a call about theft and trespassing, Larkin said, glancing between Miranda and Tessa. Which one of you is Ms. Burley? I am, Miranda declared, stepping forward. She tossed her hair in a show of confidence. Thank you for coming. This woman, she pointed a manicured nail at Tessa, has stolen my package. She's lurking around the neighborhood, and she won't give it back. Tessa gave a calm nod when the officers looked her way. My name is Tessa Monroe. I'm holding a package because it was addressed to me, my name, specifically. Ms. Burley insists it's hers. Larkin frowned. Do you have some identification, Ms. Monroe? Tessa reached into her back pocket, retrieving a slim wallet. She produced a state-issued ID, which Larkin examined under the streetlight. Satisfied, he returned it. Miranda crossed her arms. Look at the shipping label, if it's for her, then why was the delivery van in front of my house? Obviously, there's a mix-up, and she's taking advantage of it. Tessa spoke evenly. Officer, the label shows my name. I suspect the driver got the address wrong, or Ms. Burley tried to intercept the delivery because it looked similar to something she was expecting. Either way, I have every right to hold on to what's addressed to me. Officer Ramirez gestured for Tessa to hand over the package. Tessa hesitated a fraction of a second, then complied, handing it to the officer. Ramirez examined the label in the squad car's spotlight. It does say, Tessa Monroe. The address, however, looks partially smudged. Hard to read the exact house number. Miranda let out an exaggerated sigh. You see? A convenient smudge. How do we know she didn't tamper with it? Ignoring the accusation, Officer Larkin cleared his throat. "Ms. Burley, we'll need your statement. How exactly did you determine this package belonged to you?" Eyes blazing, Miranda launched into a grand retelling. How she'd been awaiting a special shipment of Belderm lotions, how she saw Tessa loitering near her property, and how Tessa refused to relinquish what was clearly a misdelivered parcel. She finished by proclaiming Tessa had no valid reason to be on her street at all. Officer Larkin nodded politely, then turned to Tessa. "And your side of the story, Ms. Monroe?" Taking a breath, Tessa recounted how she was a private investigator, how she'd arranged a particular delivery to arrive in this neighborhood, and how she possessed records indicating repeated incidents of parcel theft. She mentioned her suspicion that Ms. Burley was involved in the local spree of missing deliveries. Miranda's face flushed with anger. "How dare you accuse me of being a thief? That's outrageous." Officer Ramirez exchanged a look with Larkin. "Ma'am," Ramirez said gently, "we have to consider all claims until we figure out what's going on." Miranda scoffed, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Oh, so now I'm under investigation because I tried to retrieve my own package?" Tessa, who had remained composed throughout Miranda's tirade, took a step forward. "Officer, I have some digital evidence that might clarify things. It's stored on my phone, photos, screenshots, and even some GPS data showing local deliveries that disappeared shortly after being dropped off." Miranda's stomach tightened. She tried to mask her growing apprehension behind a veneer of outrage. "This is ridiculous. She's making it all up." Ramirez extended a hand. "Ms. Monroe, I'll take a look at your evidence. If it's relevant, it could help us understand the situation." Tessa pulled out her phone and navigated to a file containing time-stamped photos of various houses in the neighborhood, each showing a package being delivered, then vanishing soon after. The phone also held logs referencing an app Tessa used to track delivery times. Officer Larkin arched an eyebrow at the thoroughness of the documentation. "When did you gather all this?" he asked. "I've been around for a few weeks," Tessa replied, "ever since local residents hired me. They suspected internal theft from the shipping company, but I found a different pattern. Deliveries near Ms. Burley's residence were frequently involved." Miranda's outrage flared. "This is harassment. You can't just spy on people and accuse them of crimes without proof." Tessa calmly met Miranda's gaze. "I have more than enough proof. You see, Ms. Burley, each time a package vanished, your home security camera, yes, the one aimed at your porch, recorded suspicious movements. I subpoenaed metadata from your camera logs when your neighbors filed complaints." Officer Ramirez looked at Miranda. "Is this true, Ms. Burley? That your security camera might have captured these incidents?" Miranda's lips quivered. She hadn't expected Tessa to mention a subpoena, let alone camera logs. Indeed, Miranda's camera recorded more than she'd ever planned to share. She'd occasionally bragged to friends about how advanced her security system was, capable of capturing crisp footage day or night. Now, that evidence threatened to unravel her claims. "I have no idea what she's talking about," Miranda muttered, heat rising to her cheeks. "No one subpoenaed me. I would have known." Tessa shrugged. "The request went to the local security firm that handles your camera's cloud storage. Perhaps they didn't inform you yet. I've had legal backing from a group of residents who lost valuable packages." Officer Larkin exchanged a knowing glance with his partner. "Ms. Burley, do you mind if we check your camera footage? If it's all just a misunderstanding, that could clear things up." Miranda hesitated, her mind whirling. If she refused, it would look suspicious. If she agreed, who knew what Tessa had already uncovered? Meanwhile, Tessa stood poised, as though every move Miranda might make was already anticipated. As a swirl of conflicting thoughts raced through Miranda's head, the quiet street seemed to close in on her. Where was her usual aura of control? Now she was on the defensive, pinned by an investigator who turned her own 911 call into an inquisition. She felt an almost uncontrollable urge to lash out again, to call Tessa a liar or an intruder. But the presence of the officers, and Tessa's formidable documentation, forced her to consider carefully. After what felt like an eternity, Miranda spoke through clenched teeth. "Fine. We can check the footage. But you'll see it's just my daily comings and goings. There's no conspiracy here." Ramirez nodded. "All right, that's a start. If you have a remote login, we can view it on your phone or computer." Miranda stiffened. Well, I need to go inside and access the system from my laptop." "You're not coming in without a warrant." Officer Larkin sighed. "We're just trying to confirm the story. If you want to cooperate, we can keep this informal. Otherwise, we'll have to escalate the situation." A bead of sweat trickled down Miranda's temple. She realized Tessa had cornered her, orchestrating this entire confrontation so it would end precisely like this. The package Tessa held was merely a trigger for a bigger reveal. Miranda's best option was to control the narrative, show partial compliance, and hope she could delete or manipulate certain files before the police could see them. She nodded, forcing a polite smile. "All right, come with me, but just to the porch. I'll bring out the laptop and let you see the relevant clips." As the group trudged toward Miranda's house, Tessa discreetly followed at a distance, her posture calm. She knew that even if Miranda tried to tamper with footage now, the original subpoena and stored logs were out of Miranda's control. The stage was set, and Miranda had unwittingly invited the police deeper into her affairs. The tension felt razor-sharp, the suburban idyll replaced by a vortex of suspicion. For Miranda, the realization that she could no longer spin this situation in her favor was dawning all too quickly. Her illusions of moral high ground had crumbled the moment Tessa showed her methodical evidence. Each step onto her porch echoed with the foreboding possibility that everything Miranda had worked to conceal might soon be laid bare. Miranda Burley led the small group, Officers Larkin and Ramirez, and a trailing Tessa Monroe, to her wide front porch. The setting sun cast long shadows across the well-maintained yard, highlighting the tension that clung to every step. Miranda paused by an ornate table, flipping open her sleek laptop. The porch light flickered on automatically, illuminating the scene like a stage. "Let's make this quick," Miranda said, doing her best to sound composed. "I have the security camera's software here. You can see exactly what's recorded." Officer Ramirez remained by Miranda's side, while Officer Larkin walked a few paces back, carefully watching Tessa. He seemed unsure of how to proceed with Tessa's presence, but Tessa made no attempt to leave. She merely stood calmly, arms folded, observing the porch with a discerning gaze. Miranda typed her login credentials, praying that she could maneuver within the software to delete or obscure any incriminating clips. But as soon as she accessed the camera's main dashboard, she realized Tessa had indeed filed legal requests that might have locked certain files. A notice in bold letters stated, "Some footage is currently secured for ongoing investigation. User modifications are restricted." Her heart sank. She clicked on the earliest available date from the previous month, hoping to show something innocuous, her returning from a shopping trip, perhaps. But an error message popped up, reminding her that partial lockdown was in effect. She forced a tight smile, turning to the officers. "Looks like there's some sort of glitch or lock. I can show you last week's recordings, at least." Officer Ramirez leaned in, brow furrowed. "Any idea why there'd be an investigation lock on your security footage?" Miranda attempted a dismissive shrug. "Who knows? Maybe the company messed something up. I'm sure it's not relevant." But Tessa's voice cut in softly from behind them. "It's relevant, officer. My clients, residents in this neighborhood, requested that Argus Security, the company hosting Ms. Burley's footage, freeze anything around the dates of reported thefts. Standard procedure when multiple thefts point to a single geographic area." Ramirez turned to Miranda. "Is that correct, ma'am?" Miranda's carefully curated world felt like it was unraveling, thread by thread. I don't know. No one informed me of any official freeze. Maybe Argus security messed up. Officer Larkin stepped forward, arms crossed. Ms. Burley, with your permission, we can request Argus security unseal these files. If you have nothing to hide, it'd help clear your name quickly. The color drained from Miranda's face. She scrolled through recent clips, trying to find an innocuous segment to display. Up popped a video from 2 nights ago, an unobstructed view of her front porch. It showed a large package being dropped off in the early evening. An hour later, a figure approached from the side, revealed, with startling clarity, to be Miranda herself. She hovered for a moment, peering at the address label, then carried the box inside. The time stamp indicated the address was not hers, though the details weren't fully visible. Another clip from the next day showed her returning to the porch with the box, relabeling it hastily with a piece of paper, then placing it in her trash bin. Miranda's breath caught. She'd hoped these clips were part of the sealed batch. The presence of Tessa's freeze evidently didn't cover the last few days, or perhaps only certain intervals. Officer Ramirez stepped closer, eyes fixed on the screen. "That's you, Ms. Burley," Ramirez said softly, stating the obvious. "And that package, didn't it belong to someone else?" Miranda's throat tightened. She scrambled to find an explanation. I was just checking it. Sometimes deliveries mix up the address. I intended to contact the rightful owner, but then I realized it was worthless, so I threw it away." Tessa arched an eyebrow. Worthless? According to the shipping logs, that particular package contained an expensive tablet. The rightful owner reported it missing. Miranda spun around, leveling a glare at Tessa. "How would you know that?" Tessa's voice remained measured. "Because when the owner discovered it never arrived, they pulled the tracking data, noticed it was delivered here, and alerted me." Officer Larkin cleared his throat. "Ma'am, that's starting to sound like evidence of theft. If a parcel wasn't addressed to you and you disposed of it without contacting the company or the addressee, that's questionable at best." A flush crept up Miranda's neck. She quickly exited that video file, rummaging through a few other harmless clips, footage of a cat slinking across her yard, a mail carrier dropping off letters. She prayed the officers and Tessa might relent. But Tessa suddenly spoke again. "Officers, I have an external drive with me containing merged data, footage from Ms. Burley's camera on certain dates, plus shipping logs from the online retailers. All legally obtained after the residents filed official complaints. If we watch it, you'll see a pattern, multiple packages marked as delivered in this general area, all suspiciously ending up in Ms. Burley's possession before they vanished." Miranda's pulse hammered in her ears. The audacity of Tessa, brandishing such a wealth of information, made her feel cornered. "This is all circumstantial," Miranda hissed. "I have a right to privacy. And that video. Maybe I opened a box by mistake, realized it wasn't mine, and tossed it. That's hardly a crime." Ramirez looked unconvinced. "Ma'am, if the property didn't belong to you, disposing of it isn't exactly legal either. Typically, you'd notify the courier or the rightful owner. There's also the possibility you deliberately kept items you found valuable." Miranda bristled. "Prove it." Officer Larkin glanced between Tessa and Miranda. He cleared his throat. "Ms. Monroe, do you have the external drive with you now? We could take a quick look." Wordlessly, Tessa reached into her satchel and produced a small, slim device. She handed it to Larkin, who plugged it into Miranda's laptop. The screen lit up with a directory of video files, date-stamped over the past several weeks. Each file had a notation about the time of suspected theft or package tampering. Miranda tried to maintain her composure, but panic threatened to break her veneer. She hated the feeling of being overshadowed. She was supposed to be the powerful one here, the wealthy homeowner who'd called in the complaint, not the suspect. Her mind spun, grasping at ways to undermine Tessa's evidence. She could claim Tessa had fabricated the footage, but the presence of the camera's official watermark dispelled that defense. She could also claim that the packages had been left at her porch for days, but the timestamps rendered that argument moot. Relentlessly, the officers began clicking through clips, each one more damning than the last, Miranda retrieving boxes addressed to people on adjacent streets, some with clearly visible labels showing names like Owen Rutherford or Marcia Kim. In some scenes, Miranda used scissors to slice open the tape, rummaging through the contents before either stashing them inside or discarding packaging in her trash bin. It was a textbook pattern of theft, laid bare on her own security system. The slow burn of humiliation flooded Miranda's cheeks, her carefully curated image unraveling. Tessa stood near the edge of the porch, arms crossed, her expression neither triumphant nor mocking, simply resolute, as though fulfilling a professional obligation to reveal the truth. Finally, Officer Ramirez paused a clip showing Miranda removing a brand new handbag from a misdelivered package. The label read, Isabel T. Ramirez, 2 blocks over. The officer's eyes widened. That might be my cousin, Ms. Burley. You took a bag that should have gone to my own relative. Miranda felt the blood drain from her face. Of all the unlucky coincidences, this was the worst. I didn't realize, Officer Larkin exchanged a glance with Ramirez. Ma'am, I'm afraid this is looking very serious. We have enough to suspect you've been engaging in repeated theft. Miranda tried to sputter a defense, I wasn't going to keep them. It was a mistake, or maybe I was holding them to, but she faltered, the weight of the evidence too heavy to spin. Tessa's voice cut through the momentary silence. The package I held today was the final piece. I had it labeled incorrectly on purpose to see if Ms. Burley would intercept it. She tried to claim it was hers from the start. That's exactly the pattern we've documented. Miranda's hands shook. She saw the flicker of realization in the officer's eyes, they knew they had a repeat offender on their hands. Her mind raced, scanning for an escape route. Could she pin the blame on the courier? Her housekeeper, Denise? A glitch in the online ordering system? None of it would stick in the face of direct video evidence. Deep inside, a whispered acceptance of defeat began to form. Her illusions of controlling the situation had crumbled. The only question now was how severe the consequences would be. Officer Ramirez placed a firm hand on Miranda's shoulder. Ma'am, we have to ask you some more questions inside, and will likely need to conduct a search of your property. Are you going to cooperate, or do we need to escalate this? Miranda stared blankly at her door, feeling the final remnants of her defiance slip away. She nodded, almost imperceptibly. Tessa's quiet presence loomed in the background, a testament to the thoroughness of her investigation and the unraveling of Miranda's once flawless facade. Under the evening glow of her porch light, Miranda Burley stepped aside to let Officer Larkin and Officer Ramirez into her foyer. Tessa Monroe followed, though Miranda inwardly resented allowing the woman who had orchestrated this whole confrontation to set foot inside her meticulously decorated home. Yet, a sense of inevitable surrender compelled Miranda to comply. Any show of resistance would only deepen the officer's suspicions. The foyer was a showcase of affluence, polished marble floors, a sweeping staircase, and framed artwork from various luxury trips Miranda had taken. Usually, she relished the compliments such decor drew. Now, the opulence felt like a glaring reminder of privilege, one that might soon turn public opinion squarely against her. Officer Ramirez signaled for Tessa to wait by the entrance while they spoke with Miranda more privately. Miranda welcomed the brief reprieve from Tessa's steady gaze. Leading the officers into the living room, she gestured toward a plush white sofa. Please, make yourselves comfortable, she said stiffly, trying to maintain a veneer of civility. Neither officer sat, their posture denoting businesslike seriousness. Officer Larkin glanced around, taking stock of the large crystal vases and ornate rugs. Ms. Burley, as we mentioned on the porch, we have strong reasons to believe you've been intercepting and possibly stealing packages meant for other residents in this neighborhood. Miranda folded her arms. Look, this is being blown way out of proportion. I have a perfect right to open any package that ends up on my property. Sometimes the labels are hard to read, or the courier gets it wrong. I was simply verifying the contents. Officer Ramirez tightened her lips. Ma'am, verification is one thing. Keeping items that clearly belong to someone else is another. We have multiple videos suggesting you didn't attempt to return them or notify the rightful owners. Miranda inhaled sharply. How am I supposed to track down strangers? The courier should do its job properly so these mistakes don't happen. That doesn't explain the brand new tablet or the handbag, among other items, Officer Larkin pointed out. Or why you discarded evidence that could have helped find the real recipients. A knot formed in Miranda's stomach. You don't understand, there was no malicious intent. I thought maybe some of these packages were pranks or promotional freebies. My life is busy, I didn't have time to investigate every little package. Ramirez fixed her with a skeptical look. Promotional freebies addressed to different names. That's not exactly believable. Miranda's composure began to crack. Her voice took on a pleading edge. Look, I'll return everything. I'll pay for anything damaged or missing. Just, please, can we handle this quietly? I have a reputation in this town. Larkin exchanged a glance with Ramirez. We can't just ignore a pattern of theft. The law is clear, taking items that don't belong to you is a crime. Miranda's gaze flickered toward the large bay window overlooking her front yard. Beyond it, she could see Tessa's silhouette pacing on the porch. That woman must be reveling in Miranda's predicament. The injustice of it all churned in Miranda's mind, her name, her standing, her social circle, everything now at risk because of a few boxes that found their way onto her property. Why couldn't Tessa have let it slide? Officer Larkin cleared his throat. We'll need to inspect your home for any remaining packages that may not belong to you. You're free to consent, or we can seek a warrant. It's your choice. Miranda's heart pounded. A search of her entire home? That conjured images of rummaged closets, upturned drawers, and humiliating exposure. Yet resisting might lead to a forced warrant, intensifying suspicion. She weighed her options, each one leading toward the same undesirable end. Fine, she whispered, a tremor in her voice. I'll cooperate. A moment later, Tessa was invited inside to observe, her role as a private investigator sanctioned by the neighbors who'd hired her. Miranda shot Tessa a glance of pure resentment, but Tessa's expression remained impassive, as if she were simply fulfilling a duty. The group began a methodical walkthrough, past the grand dining room, through the kitchen, and into the spacious garage. The garage was impeccably tidy, on the surface. Sleek metal shelves lined the walls, containing bins labeled with categories like winter clothes, holiday decor, and miscellaneous. Officer Ramirez gestured to one of the miscellaneous bins. Mind if we look inside? Miranda's stomach twisted. She nodded, forcing a blank expression. Ramirez lifted the lid, revealing ordinary household items on top, light bulbs, cleaning supplies. But as she dug deeper, her hand brushed against a rectangular cardboard box with a partially peeled shipping label. She held it up for Larkin to see. This label says it's for a John Sewell, Ramirez noted, addressed to a house on Maple Street, quite a distance from here. Her gaze hardened. Care to explain? Miranda's mind raced. I must have intended to return it. Maybe I forgot. Officer Larkin rummaged further, unearthing another box addressed to a Paula Hernandez in the next county, and a small padded envelope bearing the name E. Nguyen, someone Miranda had never even met. The facade of innocence crumbled before her eyes. Tessa stood by, quietly documenting each find with her phone, presumably gathering further proof. How many boxes do you have here? Larkin muttered, moving to another set of bins labeled storage. The officers popped open lids, revealing more deliveries that clearly weren't addressed to Miranda. One had already been ripped open, a designer scarf half pulled from the packaging. Another contained a hardcover textbook for an advanced biology class, likely meant for a college student. Miranda's attempts at composure failed. Her eyes brimmed with humiliation and anger, tears threatening to spill over. I made mistakes, okay. But I was going to do something about them eventually. It's not like I was planning to profit off them or anything. A bitter laugh escaped Tessa's lips, perhaps the first sign of real emotion Miranda had seen from her. You've got quite a stash here for someone who had no malicious intent. Ramirez turned, her expression stern. Ma'am, we have to do our job. This is looking like a systematic pattern of theft, not just an occasional mix-up. Miranda felt lightheaded, her carefully crafted world spinning away from her grasp. She wanted to shout at Tessa for meddling, at the officers for prying, at the universe for letting a few misdelivered packages escalate into a ruinous scandal. But nothing she could say would erase the evidence piling up in front of them, evidence she had unwittingly kept in her own home. Officer Larkin retrieved his radio. We might need backup to catalog everything, he said, stepping outside for a moment to make a call. The overhead garage light buzzed, its fluorescent glow illuminating Miranda's downfall as bins and boxes were laid out, each a testament to her wrongdoing. Softly, Tessa approached Ramirez, offering a list of reported missing items. We can match these to the shipping labels we find, she suggested. Miranda glared at her. Who do you think you are, searching my home? Tessa's calm gaze met Miranda's. I'm just doing the job I was hired to do by your neighbors. They wanted to protect themselves from package thieves. Miranda flinched at the term thieves, but she couldn't refute it now. Her attempts at downplaying the seriousness of her actions felt absurd in the face of the officer's scrutiny. She realized that not only was she losing any chance of sympathy, but she was also tarnishing her entire social standing in one catastrophic evening. Word would spread like wildfire through her affluent circles. She squeezed her eyes shut, longing to wake from this nightmare. But the clang of an empty box hitting the floor jolted her back to reality. Officer Ramirez stepped toward her, empathy gone from her gaze. Ms. Burley, for the record, you said you'd cooperate fully. Are there any other areas of the house where you might be storing deliveries that aren't yours? Miranda's voice cracked. No. That's everything. Everything's in here. In that moment, the last vestiges of denial slipped away. She was caught, plain and simple. The evidence, the officers, Tessa's unwavering presence, all conspired to strip her illusions. The only question that remained was how severe the consequences would be, and whether Miranda could salvage any fragment of her reputation after the truth came to light. Miranda Burley stood in the harsh glow of her garage's overhead lights, flanked by boxes, officers, and Tessa Monroe's unyielding scrutiny. She felt like a prisoner in her own home, each bin and mislabeled parcel testifying against her. The stench of cardboard and shame hung in the air, a potent mix that sent her thoughts spiraling toward desperation. Officer Larkin clicked off his radio and rejoined the group. Additional units will be here soon, he informed Ramirez. We'll need their help documenting everything. He glanced at Miranda, who was leaning against a cold metal shelf for support. Ma'am, we'll also need to ask if you've sold or disposed of any items. The neighbors have reported electronics, jewelry, and other valuables missing. Miranda's grip on the shelf tightened. She hated the idea of disclosing every detail of her ill-advised scavenging. She had no intention of admitting certain items had made their way into her personal usage or ended up as last-minute gifts for acquaintances who never asked questions about the origin. Anxiety hammered in her chest. Meanwhile, Tessa Monroe and Officer Ramirez stood near a small folding table that Miranda used for sorting groceries and household supplies. Tessa removed her phone, pulled up a digital log, and began matching each discovered parcel to her records. This one matches a missing watch reported by Mrs. Flynn, Tessa said quietly, pointing to a small battered box. She filed a police report 2 weeks ago. Miranda's throat constricted. She recalled that watch all too well, a gleaming, rose-gold piece. She tried it on for fun, but found the style too gaudy. So she'd planned to discard it or perhaps sell it online. Now, the memory felt like a chain around her neck. Officer Ramirez nodded. So that watch is still unaccounted for. Tessa scrolled through her notes. Likely removed from the packaging. We'll see if Ms. Burley can tell us where it went. Miranda mustered the remnants of her bravado. I don't know. Maybe I tossed it out. It was an accident, I swear. An awkward silence followed, each second pressing down on Miranda's psyche. She sensed that no one believed her. In the distance, a siren announced the approach of additional officers. She pictured them streaming into her home, rummaging through her closets, maybe even glimpsing her personal diaries or embarrassing souvenirs. The prospect of that intrusion reawakened her anger. I deserve some privacy, Miranda spat, fixing her gaze on Tessa. You've gone too far, rummaging through my things, dragging the police into my house. Tessa's brow furrowed, but she held her composure. You called them, she reminded Miranda. You escalated this situation when you claimed I was stealing a package. If that call hadn't happened, we might have pursued a warrant more discreetly. But your actions accelerated everything. Miranda's cheeks burned. She realized the depth of her miscalculation. By involving law enforcement, she'd given Tessa the perfect stage to reveal her stash, turning Miranda's own property into a crime scene. She opened her mouth to fire back some clever retort, but words failed her. Just then, two more uniformed officers entered the garage. One was Officer Hughes, a robust man with a steady gaze, the other, Officer Collins, a woman with determined eyes. They took in the array of boxes and the tension in the space. All right, Hughes said, scanning the shelves. We'll start cataloging each parcel. Ms. Burley, do you have any others that aren't stored here? Miranda shook her head, lips pressed into a thin line. Collins pulled out a clipboard, ready to note down addresses and potential contents. She handed Tessa a separate form to cross-reference the missing items list. Officer Ramirez turned to Miranda, her voice taking on a gentler tone. Ma'am, it would help your case if you cooperate fully. This is a lot of merchandise. Miranda snorted a humorless laugh. Help my case. My life is already in ruins. You think being cooperative will magically erase the fact that I'm standing here like a criminal in my own house? Ramirez gave a small shrug. We aren't here to judge your entire life, ma'am. But yes, honesty can affect how the process goes from here on out, whether you face immediate arrest, possible bail, or further legal complications. The word arrest hung in the air. Miranda had never pictured herself in handcuffs, not even in her worst nightmares. She'd orchestrated countless charity galas, rubbed elbows with politicians, and bragged about her philanthropic pursuits. The idea of mugshots, court appearances, and the fallout with her elite social circle made her stomach churn. She took a shaky breath. Fine, she mumbled. I'll answer your questions. Officer Hughes began systematically scanning shipping labels. This one is for a Nigel Carter, address on Maple Lane, he said, marking his sheet. And here's a Grace Phillips, Willow Avenue. That's across town. Ms. Burley, how did you even come across this one? Miranda squirmed. I found it on my porch one morning. The label was half torn. I just assumed, maybe it was something promotional. Then I was too busy to deal with it. You keep using the word promotional. That's not typically how packages arrive, Tessa remarked quietly. You had to have noticed they were addressed to other people. And many appear unopened, so you saw the names clearly. Miranda avoided Tessa's gaze, focusing instead on the cement floor beneath her feet. She recalled the jolt of excitement whenever she discovered a new box, akin to a free shopping spree. She told herself it was the courier's fault for messing up. If an item ended up on her doorstep, it was practically fate. Now, all that rationalization felt foolish and pitiful. Officer Ramirez took another step forward, her voice firm but not unkind. Ms. Burley, can you tell us if you have receipts or records of returning any of these items to the rightful owners? Miranda closed her eyes, inhaling deeply. "No," she whispered. "I never returned anything. I meant to, but I didn't." A resigned hush fell over the garage. The final admission sealed Miranda's fate, sparing no illusions. She had knowingly kept items intended for others, indulging in a spree of petty theft under the guise of misdelivered parcels. One by one, the officers gathered evidence, labeling each box and making notes. Tessa quietly handed over her compiled list of missing items cross-referenced with the shipping details. The synergy of official records and Tessa's investigative work painted a damning picture: multiple deliveries lost in the same area, date-stamped times aligning with Miranda's camera footage, and, ultimately, the physical items neatly hidden in her garage. Finally, Officer Hughes approached Miranda with a grave expression. "Ms. Burley, based on what we found here, we have probable cause to believe you've engaged in multiple counts of theft. We'll be placing you under arrest." Miranda felt her knees threaten to buckle. She pressed a hand to her mouth, tears flooding her eyes. "Arrest? But I can pay for everything, make restitution. I'll talk to the neighbors, I'll do anything." Officer Larkin, who had remained off to the side, stepped closer. "It's not that simple, ma'am. This is a criminal matter now. Restitution is part of the legal process, but it doesn't negate the crime itself." Miranda's gaze swung wildly around the garage, coming to rest on Tessa, who wore an expression of empathetic firmness. "You set me up," Miranda hissed, voice shaking. Tessa sighed. "You set yourself up, Ms. Burley. I just provided the evidence." Without further protest, Miranda surrendered to the officer's instructions. Officer Ramirez guided her through the formalities of being taken into custody, reading her rights, securing her wrists with metal handcuffs that bit into her skin. Each click echoed with finality. The humiliation was complete. As Miranda was led outside, the last rays of twilight gave way to darkness. Neighbors, drawn by the commotion, peeked out from behind curtains or stood on doorsteps. Whispers and gasps rippled through the usually serene street. The woman who had once boasted of her elegant lifestyle and impeccable social connections now stepped into the back of a patrol car, the weight of her choices crashing down around her. Inside her mind, 1,000 questions whirled. How had it come to this? Would her friends and colleagues ever forgive her? Could she salvage any part of her life after such a public downfall? But the immediate reality was inescapable: she was no longer the accuser, she had become the accused. Within the fluorescent-lit interior of the police station, Miranda Burley's once confident demeanor had been stripped away by the swirl of booking procedures. Officer Larkin filled out paperwork while Officer Ramirez stood close by, ensuring the process ran smoothly. Miranda, seated on a bench, stared at the tiled floor, her mind still reeling from the reality of being officially under arrest. Her arms felt bare without the comforting luxury of her designer jacket. Instead, she wore a generic gray sweater that one of the station's staff offered after she complained of the chill. Each passing minute hammered home how far she'd fallen from her pedestal as a wealthy, influential figure in the community. She heard the distant clang of metal doors and footsteps echoing in the corridor. Another officer, one unfamiliar to her, stepped in with Tessa Monroe. They approached the bench where Miranda sat, though Tessa paused a respectful distance away. "Ms. Monroe," said Officer Ramirez, "do you have the documentation ready to hand over?" Tessa nodded, holding a neatly organized folder. "Here are the relevant case notes, including statements from local residents. I've also got digital copies of the video evidence. Everything's itemized with timestamps and matching shipping logs." Miranda's stomach twisted at the thoroughness. She recognized how meticulously Tessa had orchestrated her downfall. In the silence that followed, Miranda mustered the last shreds of her courage. "So that's it, then," she murmured, avoiding eye contact. "You gather your evidence, watch me get paraded around in cuffs, and all because you wanted to prove some silly point." Tessa's expression softened, though she didn't move closer. "It was never about humiliating you, Ms. Burley. The neighbors just wanted to stop whoever was taking their packages. My role was to find the truth. The truth, Miranda repeated bitterly, letting out a hollow laugh. And how exactly did you discover it was me? Why not blame the couriers? Tessa glanced at Officer Ramirez, who gave a slight nod, as though granting permission to explain. I started with the shipping company, investigating their delivery records. Initially, I suspected an internal employee might be stealing valuables. But the data didn't align with that theory. Packages were shown as delivered, with GPS coordinates matching doorsteps. Then the items vanished. So I combed through neighborhood security footage, yours included, and found multiple instances where boxes ended up under your care. Miranda's cheeks burned. But you set me up at the end, didn't you? Deliberately addressed a box to some alias and planted it near my house. Tessa's voice was gentle but unwavering. Yes, because I needed a conclusive incident that would stand up if you ever tried to claim ignorance or confusion. The box was addressed to me, but the label was partially obscured, which matched the pattern of how other packages mysteriously ended up at your doorstep. When you tried to claim it was yours, that sealed the deal. Miranda pressed her lips together, tears threatening again. The woman in front of her didn't appear triumphant or gloating, just determined. An odd pang of shame gripped Miranda, shame not just for getting caught, but for the fact that deep down, she knew every stolen item had been a deliberate choice. She recalled the thrill of seeing a misaddressed parcel, the fleeting sense of power in deciding whether to keep or toss it. Now, that thrill had turned to raw humiliation. Officer Larkin cleared his throat. Ms. Burley, we'll need to move you through processing. Ms. Monroe, the sheriff's department might reach out to you for further statements. Tessa nodded, stepping back as Larkin gently guided Miranda toward a hall leading to the booking station. She felt Tessa's gaze on her back, but said nothing, too consumed by dread at what awaited her next: fingerprints, mug shots, the branding of a criminal record. In the dim corridor, Miranda's mind raced with logistical fears. What about bail? She had assets, certainly, but how quickly could she secure release? The looming specter of a court date weighed heavily on her. She pictured neighbors, acquaintances, maybe even close friends reading headlines or whispering behind her back. The social ostracism might be unbearable. A short time later, she found herself standing in front of a camera, the harsh flash capturing a mug shot. She'd never looked less composed. Without the comfort of makeup or carefully styled hair, she felt naked under the unflinching lens. It was a far cry from the polished, confident portraits she shared on social media. While Officer Ramirez handled the paperwork, another staff member, a stout woman named Ms. Elkins, escorted Miranda to a holding area. The station's subdued hum filled her ears, clacking keyboards, muffled voices, the occasional buzz of an overhead fluorescent. She was assigned a small bench behind locked bars, though the staff treated her politely, perhaps recognizing her from local news coverage of charity galas or fundraisers. Sitting there, time slowed to a crawl. She replayed each choice that led her here, feeling an odd sense of detachment. Couldn't she have simply returned the packages or contacted the neighbors? The momentary rush she'd felt at scoring free items now seemed an absurd justification for risking everything she'd built. Eventually, Ms. Elkins returned, instructing Miranda to follow. She was informed she could make a phone call. She dialed her lawyer, a well-known defense attorney who had once been a guest at one of her extravagant dinner parties. The attorney, startled to receive her call under such circumstances, promised to come promptly. While waiting, Miranda glimpsed Tessa through a window, speaking with an officer. Tessa's posture was calm, her expression earnest as she walked the officer through a digital slideshow. Miranda realized that Tessa was concluding her part in the investigation, providing a professional handoff. Once Tessa left, Miranda would have no scapegoat. She felt a twist of irrational anger at Tessa for being the one to catch her, but deeper down, she recognized her own culpability. Her attorney, Mr. Caldwell, arrived within the hour, his tailored suit a stark contrast to the police station's drab interior. Miranda rushed to explain the situation, though her stammering confessions were disjointed. Caldwell placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, directing her to speak calmly, emphasizing that he needed every detail to mount a defense. She recounted the confrontation on the sidewalk, Tessa's revelations, and the evidence in her garage. Caldwell frowned. "You understand the severity, right? We're dealing with repeated theft, potential felony charges depending on the total value. And that private investigator, she's thorough." Miranda nodded miserably. "I know. I just hoped we could keep it out of the spotlight." Caldwell sighed, glancing at the rows of desks and busy officers. "It might be too late for that. The neighbors who hired Ms. Monroe are likely already talking. Social media will blow up. We need a strategy for damage control." Miranda's heart sank even further. Damage control. That was her life now, scrambling to patch up a sinking reputation. She recalled all the times she'd boasted about her philanthropic ventures, the social events she hosted to cultivate an image of generosity and style. Ironically, she had stolen from the very community she pretended to uplift. Before Caldwell led her away to discuss bail arrangements, Miranda couldn't resist a final glance over her shoulder. Through the glass doors, she spotted Tessa stepping into the station's lobby, likely preparing to leave. Miranda wondered if Tessa felt any regret or if this was just another case closed in her line of work. A pang of bitterness welled up, mingled with a surprising hint of gratitude. Had Tessa not exposed her, she might have continued spiraling into moral decay. Yet, the cost was monumental: a shattered facade, a looming trial, and the near certainty of becoming a cautionary tale for privileged individuals who believe they're above consequences. Miranda inhaled, smoothing her hair with trembling hands. She followed Caldwell, bracing herself for what came next, a legal fight that could drag her name through the mud, overshadowing everything she once held dear. In that moment, she understood that while Tessa's investigation had toppled her world, it had also forced her to confront a truth: her wealth and status wouldn't shield her from accountability. The next morning, the news of Miranda Burley's arrest rippled through the upscale enclave of West Haven Estates like wildfire. Despite Miranda's attempts to keep the situation under wraps, word spread across social media platforms, local gossip circles, and even the neighborhood watch group. The story was too sensational to ignore: a prominent socialite caught red-handed with a garage full of stolen parcels. Inside the police station, Miranda sat in a small interview room, waiting for her lawyer, Mr. Caldwell, to finalize her bail paperwork. Every passing minute felt excruciating, her nerves frayed by the knowledge that her neighbors were undoubtedly dissecting every detail. She imagined them labeling her a hypocrite, a fraud, someone who pretended to be charitable while secretly pilfering from their doorsteps. Officer Ramirez entered quietly, shutting the door behind her. "Ma'am, you'll be transferred to a holding area soon, pending bail confirmation. I wanted to give you a quick update: we've catalogued over 30 parcels in your garage. Combined value is fairly high." Miranda's stomach lurched. "How high?" she asked in a near whisper. Ramirez consulted her notes. "Rough estimates put it in the thousands, maybe tens of thousands. Electronics, designer items, and so on. Enough to consider felony charges." A cold sweat broke out on Miranda's brow. She swallowed hard, mind reeling at the potential legal ramifications. "What happens next?" "That'll be up to the district attorney," Ramirez replied. "Your lawyer can guide you through the details. But I suggest cooperating fully, returning items, issuing statements of contrition, anything to show remorse. The victims are your neighbors, after all." Miranda pressed her palms together, as though in prayer. "I never wanted it to come to this. I just," Ramirez's gaze softened momentarily. "It's not for me to judge your motivations. But actions have consequences, Ms. Burley." With that, Ramirez departed, leaving Miranda alone once again. She thought about Tessa Monroe, the private investigator who had uncovered everything. Was Tessa satisfied, or perhaps relieved, that her case was complete? In the swirl of despair, Miranda found a strange curiosity, part of her almost admired Tessa's calm, methodical approach. If only they'd met under different circumstances, Miranda might have appreciated Tessa's sense of justice. A knock sounded on the door. Mr. Caldwell stepped in, adjusting his tie with a grim expression. "I've arranged your bail," he said. "It's steep, but you'll be released soon, under strict conditions. We need to prepare for a court date, where I'll argue for leniency." Miranda nodded, exhaustion etched into her features. "Anything else?" He hesitated. "The media picked up the story. A couple of local outlets are running it on their morning segments. You might want to brace yourself. They're calling you the porch pirate socialite." Miranda's face paled. Porch pirate socialite. The phrase was a brand she'd never wash off, a viral label mocking her downfall. She imagined acquaintances sharing links on group chats, texting each other with wide-eyed disbelief. The illusions of an impeccable social standing that she had cultivated so diligently were now in tatters. Caldwell guided her through the final steps of paperwork. Soon, Miranda was led to a processing desk, where an officer returned her personal belongings, a phone, her wallet, and some jewelry she'd worn. She saw the faintest flash of pity in the officer's eyes but couldn't meet the gaze. As she prepared to leave, walking down a corridor toward the station's exit, Miranda sensed stares from people who recognized her, as if they were witnessing a fallen icon. Her shoulders hunched with embarrassment. She wanted to disappear, to time travel back to that first misdelivered parcel and do the right thing. Stepping outside, she inhaled the fresh air, though it felt tainted by the knowledge that cameras might lurk nearby. Caldwell ushered her to a waiting car, which zoomed away from the station. The ride home was silent, the tension thick enough to stifle conversation. She dreaded facing the aftermath, aware that the mansion she once viewed as a fortress now felt like a prison of shame. Upon arriving, the gates slid open, revealing her manicured lawn and pristine exterior, a stark contrast to the turmoil within. "I'll keep you updated," Caldwell said, shutting the car door. Miranda nodded, mustering a weak "thank you." She watched him drive off, leaving her alone with the suffocating reality that she must eventually step inside, read the barrage of texts and emails, and perhaps see the condemnation plastered across local news sites. At that moment, the distant beep of a delivery van turning down the street echoed ominously. She remembered her prior anticipation for deliveries, the rush of unearned excitement when she discovered a package that wasn't hers. That excitement was gone, replaced by a hollow sense of regret. Miranda lifted her chin, forced her trembling legs toward the front door, and let herself in. The silence of the foyer enveloped her, reminding her of how quickly fortune could reverse. She recalled Tessa Monroe's parting words, "There was no gloating, just a simple reminder that actions carry consequences." Beneath the crushing weight of public disgrace, Miranda resolved to face the mess she had created. She would draft apologies, coordinate returns, and brace for the legal wrangling ahead. Whether the world would forgive her remained uncertain, but for the first time, she understood that redemption, if it existed, would require honesty, restitution, and a complete transformation of how she saw herself and the people around her. A week after her release on bail, Miranda Burley stood by her living room window, coffee mug in hand, gazing at the manicured hedges that once filled her with pride. Instead of finding comfort in their symmetry, she felt only the heavy throb of dread. Every knock on the door, every phone ring, every ping of her inbox triggered anxiety. News outlets had continued to amplify her story, labeling her the porch pirate socialite, a moniker that refused to die. Her lawyer, Mr. Caldwell, had secured a preliminary hearing date set for the following month. In the interim, he advised her to begin making amends. So she spent her days drafting letters of apology to neighbors, returning items wherever possible, and arranging to reimburse those who had lost irreplaceable goods. But the damage was done. Some neighbors refused direct contact, instructing her to relay everything through Caldwell, others fired off scathing social media posts, condemning her hypocrisy. When the doorbell rang that afternoon, Miranda's heart jolted. She set down her coffee and walked nervously to the foyer. Cracking open the door, she discovered Tessa Monroe on her porch, again. Except this time, Tessa held no suspicious package, only a modest folder under her arm. Surprise gripped Miranda. She'd assumed Tessa's involvement ended once the police took over. "What do you want?" Miranda asked, voice trembling with equal parts fear and anger. The memory of her arrest still stung. Tessa spoke quietly. "I came to drop off some final documents. The neighbors asked me to pass along official valuations for the items that remain missing. They're willing to settle with you privately for compensation if you agree." Miranda's cheeks burned. "So now you're a courier, too?" "Perfect. Delivering the last nails in my coffin." Tessa didn't rise to the jab. "Look, Ms. Burley, I'm not here to gloat. This was my job, to protect people from continued theft. I did it. Now the community just wants closure. Paying them back might ease your path in court." Miranda hesitated. The folder in Tessa's hands likely contained a listing of every piece of property Miranda had taken, along with associated costs. In essence, it was a ledger of her wrongdoing. With a shaky sigh, she stepped aside, allowing Tessa into the foyer. Tessa handed over the folder, and Miranda flipped through it, eyes darting over columns of item descriptions and dollar values. The totals were daunting. "What if I can't afford all this right now?" Miranda muttered, scanning the bottom line. She had wealth, yes, but her assets weren't boundless. Liquidating enough to cover all these claims, and possibly additional fines, would be painful. Tessa offered a measured response. "You can discuss payment arrangements through your lawyer. The neighbors aren't trying to ruin you financially. They just want to be made whole." Miranda slumped against the doorframe, tears threatening for the umpteenth time in recent days. "You've seen the uproar online. My reputation is shredded. My social clubs have banned me. Even longtime friends avoid my calls." Tessa exhaled. "I'm sorry you're going through that. But what did you expect? This entire fiasco shook people's trust. They feel betrayed." Her words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they were undeniably true. Miranda pressed the folder against her chest as though it might shield her from the shame. I never wanted to harm anyone," she murmured. "It started so innocently. A box showed up, I assumed it was mine, I opened it, then it kept happening. It became a habit, I suppose." Tessa nodded slowly. "Sometimes, crossing small lines leads to bigger ones." Miranda searched Tessa's face for judgment or derision but found only a quiet resolve. "Will you testify in court?" Miranda asked. "If the case goes to trial, yes," Tessa replied. "But if you settle and show genuine remorse, maybe the DA will offer a plea deal. That's for your lawyer to negotiate." Miranda swallowed hard, blinking away tears. "I'm so tired of this. I just want it to be over." A weighted silence passed between them, broken only by the soft hum of the air conditioning. In that moment, Miranda realized Tessa was not her enemy but rather the catalyst that forced a necessary reckoning. She exhaled, letting go of residual anger. "Thank you," Miranda said quietly. "For coming here, for telling me about the settlements. I might not say it again, but I appreciate knowing a path forward exists, even if it's rocky." Tessa offered a small nod. "I hope you find a way to rebuild. Everyone deserves a second chance if they're willing to earn it." Then, with little fanfare, Tessa took her leave. Miranda watched the private investigator's silhouette retreat down the driveway, folder in hand, representing both the closure of one chapter and the uncertain start of another. Inside, the hush of the foyer wrapped around her like a cocoon. 1,000 regrets surged, but also a sliver of determination. She might salvage something from this wreckage, if only she mustered the courage to face her crimes head-on and strive for genuine change. Clutching the folder, Miranda stepped into the living room. The Belderm lotions she had once coveted so eagerly still sat on a side table, unopened, now a bitter symbol of her downfall. She lifted them, sighing at how meaningless they felt in the grand scheme of her life imploding. Setting them aside, she resolved to follow her lawyer's advice meticulously, repay every neighbor, attend every court session, speak with genuine humility if given a chance for a plea. It wouldn't be easy. She'd face scorn, lawsuits, perhaps even jail time. Yet the alternative, continuing to dodge responsibility, was no longer an option. In time, maybe she could learn from this spiral of greed and restore a semblance of respect for herself. As she turned off the lights and retreated upstairs to draft more apology letters, Miranda allowed a final thought to cross her mind. Tessa Monroe had, in a twisted way, done her a favor. By exposing her misdeeds, Tessa had ended a cycle that might have grown worse, leading to an even more catastrophic fall. Though Miranda would never publicly thank Tessa, a part of her acknowledged the irony. The private investigator's arrival on her porch had shattered her illusions, yet might ultimately guide her to a more honest existence.